the sport brings in 2021 and 2022 as people take the credit that they've earned through those to pay for tickets for things like the World Cup and future internationals and things like that. I don't know if those were the things you thought from that.
The first thing I thought was that this is a minor miracle.
Yeah.
At this stage. It shows to me that that they've managed to take advantage of the support that's available, and they've kind of cut their cloth accordingly to basically, effectively remain kind of, solvent, haven't they?
Yep.
A minuscule profit. So for me, it's good news. I mean, yes, obviously, ultimately, there's a lot of money owed to a lot of different people in the longer term. But I think the sale of Red Hall, I think obviously there'll be elements there where you're selling an asset and you'll need to make sure that you're paying for an asset in the long term, because presumably the Sports City thing is a lease agreement. So that's a longer term agreement. So you need to make sure you've got the money to pay for that. But yeah, to me, in these current times, actually, that's actually a good news story that we've actually managed to spend our money wisely.
Yeah, and I always have and always will say that they shouldn't make a profit because it should all be reinvested but into the growth of the game. But right now, like you say, has to be seen as a positive that they've weathered the initial storm, and then in the balancing out process, they will have the proceeds from the Red Hall sale to support with the current liquidity, and hopefully this shows an element of financial wherewithal that should help any long-term costs that they'll have from that move.
Yeah, I would agree. So now, after you've read that long one, I'll pick up this one from the RFL has paid tributes to those recognised in the Queen's birthday honours for 2021, which include Rimla Akhtar, who's the non-executive director of the RFL, who was awarded the OBE for services to equality and diversity in sport. Stephen Ball, the General Manager of the Rugby League Benevolent Fund, who is awarded the MBE for his services to Rugby League charities. Martin Blondell, General Manager of the Steve Prescott Foundation, who was awarded the MBE for services to the community of St Helens, particularly during COVID-19. Kevin Sinfield, Leeds Rhinos Director of Rugby, who was awarded the OBE for services to Rugby League and charitable fundraising. And perhaps most controversially, as people were trailing, Nigel Wood, Chairman of Bradford Bulls, who was awarded the OBE for services to Rugby League football.
Tom Andrews got in touch. He said, "Congrats to Kevin, truly well earned and probably the first step on the way to truly becoming Sir Kev. Big Nige, on the other hand, God knows what he's done to deserve one. Services to Doomed Club, services to Sausage Rolls. He hasn't included services to ill-fitting suits either in that, but..."
Yeah, I was wondering, I think OBE stands for Our Broad Executive, I think, is what it stands for.
Shall we park the fact that that doesn't feel right, and let's talk more about the amazing work that's been done by some of the sort of more charitable angles of our sport, and Stephen Ball, Martin Blundell and Kevin Sinfield. I know Martin Blundell's wasn't specifically related to his rugby league related work, but hell, his community work and charity work stems from the Steve Prescott Foundation too, and that's been a big part in all of that. Those three in particular stand out as rugby league people we should be proud of.
Yeah, undoubtedly. There's been some fantastic work that's gone on over the last kind of 12 to 18 months as we've gone through the pandemic, and I think so these are recognitions of certain people who've done great things. Obviously there's a lot of other people who've done the same, but yeah, we shouldn't concentrate on one particular case. I'd rather look at the majority rather than the minority. And
it also shows in a broader context what a strong appointment Rimla Akhtar has been to the non-executive role of the RFL, and hopefully that can only lead things forward around that, inclusivity side of the game, I guess.
Yeah, I'd rather look to the future of the organisation rather than its past.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Former Australia captain Boyd Cordner has retired at the age of 29 because of series of concussions. At a tearful news conference, he called it the toughest decision he's ever made. The Sydney Roosters second row forward said he made the decision to quit following medical advice. Cordner captained the Roosters 181 times and also skippered New South Wales. He scored the only try and was man of the match when Australia defeated England in the 2017 World Cup final. He becomes the second Roosters player to retire on medical advice over head injuries, following Jake Friend in April.
Yeah, he's the oldest 29-year-old I've ever seen.
Feels like he's been captain of the Roosters for like my entire life.
Yeah, he's a player who feels like he's been around forever, but it shows that you can't get away with these things forever, can you? And obviously, he's kind of been suffering a lot with these persistent injuries, and I do think that unfortunately he's not the first who's had to retire, and he certainly won't be the last. With these kind of inherent kind of recurring concussions, which are obviously a big concern for his long-term health.
But I think at least now we have an understanding and approach to these kind of injuries that people take more seriously, so they don't just like shake it off and go again. They do follow the medical advice, and people understand that whilst the game is important to them, there's other things that are potentially, well, definitely more important to them, and he gets to do this, admittedly a few years short of where we would want him to, but having done so much in the game.
Well, he's won everything there is to win, hasn't he? So that's not it's not a bad way to not a bad career, is it? So you can't argue. But yeah, obviously on a personal level, I can understand his his feelings about it and the kind of sense of sadness about it. That's completely understandable. But I think in 5-10 years' time, he'll look back at this decision as a very smart one from his long-term health point of view.
Yep.
And finally, the ball steal rule is set to be dropped by the RFL after just one season. The rule, which was copied from the NRL in 2021, allows a player to steal a ball from an opponent if his teammate drop off the tackle in time, but it created confusion and difficulty for referees in deciding whether players had fallen off the tackle. Now, the governing body's law committee will seek RFL board approval to remove the rule from the start of 2022. So a spokesman said members were unanimous in their view that the law should be rolled back to its 2021 interpretation, and that the RFL should lobby the International Rugby League for the law's removal from the international game from 2022. The committee also considered bringing back scrums to the domestic game, but decided it was still too early and agreed to look at the issue again in a month's time.
Hey, they were ahead of the government in doing that, weren't they? Fatboy Rob said, glad it's going. The officials are unable to communicate well enough to see when two men are still in contact, which makes it a lottery, much like the 6 again rule. Get rid of it now, he says.
Lee Whitnell says, good. It's a shit rule and too hard to ref.
Tom Andrews says, happy with this as it looks messy and seems an inevitability it's going to end in a broken arm sooner or later. And David Hunter said, I don't even know what the rule is. Is it the same as the NRL? Because that rule works. And yes, it is the same as the NRL, David, but we only just brought it in this year and no one seems to know how to play with it being in our rule book. It's the easiest way to explain the difference between here and the NRL in how it works.
It seems to be a bit more controversial, I would say, doesn't it? Without question. I think obviously we had a bit of controversy in this weekend's games, didn't we?
Yeah, but that was a one-on-one, wasn't it?
Yes, it was actually. Yeah, now I think about it. Yeah, but yeah, I understand, because you do see attempted ball steals. It feels like, particularly towards the end of a game, it feels like almost every tackle that seems to be, particularly if the team's behind, it seems to be happening in every tackle. It just becomes a wrestling match, doesn't it? So I don't know. It does seem to have been implemented a bit smoother in the NRL, just from my observation.
Well, it's been that way in the NRL for a few years, hasn't it? They've sort of gone with that rule for a number of years, and I guess players use it more discriminately. They don't just try and do it all. So you get some teams who are trying to do it all the time, some teams who aren't trying to do it at all. I wonder how much it's been practiced, not in necessarily a controlled way, but in a like, right guys, when we're playing the game, when we're playing our captain's run game or whatever, I want you to try and ball steal, and we'll pull it up every time that there's a problem here, kind of thing, and then get those marginal ones out of there.
It does feel like there's a certain number of players in the NRL who are particularly adept at it, and I haven't necessarily seen that same level of skill in Super League players. So maybe that's where the messiness is coming from, particularly.
Yeah, I do agree with what Rob's saying, though. If we've decided it's not workable in our competition, why keep it in? You know, it's not going to change the fabric of our season if we changed it now. We've seen the NRL not be afraid to be dynamic and change the rules as and when they see fit. I don't understand why we have to go through this whole laws committee process and then do next year. Although it does seem to be the case that the board haven't approved it, so maybe that's the sticking point.
And also, it appears like it's going to be in the rule book for the World Cup at the end of the year, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is.
So, from my point of view, you've got to keep practicing it.
Yeah, because we're shit at how to operate it at the moment, so we need to get better.
Well, you can just see, I mean, crucial moment in the semi-final or final, and, a ball steal kind of, that kind of thing. You don't want to come a cropper with it. So, I think it has to stay. Whilst ever it's in the International Rugby League rule book. But yeah, I understand why some people see it as a messy thing, I would say.
So, yep, I do. It's another one where the media pressure has been all negative on it, hasn't it? I don't understand why the conversation more hasn't been let's get better at it, because it's not a bad rule, but yeah, we haven't wanted to do that. Or why, if we're going to change a rule, try it out at different grades first. Try it out in the 19s. Try it out in the. I know we don't have reserves this season, but try it out there. That makes more sense for the future as a way of doing it. Didn't we used to do it like that?
Maybe so, but yeah, we were. I think we were keen to jump on it, but perhaps a little bit more haste might have been the best option.
Yep. But anyway, thanks for everyone getting their fan views in on all that news this week. Plenty of views this week, and a shout out to, of course, to the BBC Rugby League BBC Sport Rugby League page, TotalRL.com, and LoveRugbyLeague.com for providing the news stories for us to comment on. They're the journalists, we're just the fans who spout on about it. Right, we're now going to move into match reviews. So it was round 9 of Super League, the Rainbow Laces round. And my big hope is that the 4 teams that didn't play will wear the rainbow laces in the next games that they do play to sort of carry on the positive message around, our game being for everyone.
Yeah, can't disagree with that.
But we'll move into the games that did take place, starting with Thursday night's game, Castleford versus Hull FC. It was 12-6 to the Black and Whites at half time, and they extended that out to a 30 points to 12 victory in the end away from home. Robert Hicks was the referee in this one. In terms of the team stats, Hull made over 300 more metres, making ground at 1.3 metres per carry better average gain. This helped them overcome more errors and penalties and a slightly worse team tackle success rate. Only 2 more breaks, but 4 more tries for the Black and Whites. So whilst they tried to get in their own way, they didn't manage it. From the winning side, Manu Mao with 158 metres, Liggy Sao with 148 metres and 4 successful offloads,